Welcome to the broadcast, my dear fruit crumbles. We're going to start with a comment from Miranda Kildare, who's been disparaging Prince William. I thank you for your contribution. I asked for your comments and questions, you gave me them, but I don't really appreciate you disparaging the Prince in a way that is entirely unwarranted. Miranda Kildare says, I read Spare by Prince Harry. It is quite obvious that Prince Harry was crying out for help over many years, but his brother let him down. William rejected him and didn't look out for him as any older sibling should. William is getting calmer for being so cold and uncaring. He is an evil man who did nothing at all to help a brother in need. Miranda Kildare, I shouldn't disparage you. You left a reasonable, polite comment. So I won't disparage you in that respect, but I will tell you, my dear, actually, that you are entirely mistaken, very wrong, and you need to, well, I shall give you some evidence. I shall actually show you some footage that flies in the face of everything you suggest and flies in the face of everything that Harry suggested. Because I'm sure you're not the only one. Okay, I'm sure you're not the only one. I'll simmer down a bit, but, I'm here to inform you and actually to put you right. Because lots of people have swallowed this Kool-Aid and it's sophistry. The whole affair is sophistry. And I'll point you in a direction, Miranda Kildare, of the interview from April 2017. What's this, nigh on eight years ago? When they were knocking their heads together, all this heads together business.
It was your idea. It was your idea.
It's a common thread, wasn't it? Mental health sort of seemed to run between all the different areas that we were working in.
They were knocking heads together. They sat down. This was just shy of a year after Harry met Meghan, when they met in July 2016. And for context, it's about a year before the Sussex wedding took place and about 7 months before the engagement announcement. So they were shagging at this time, they were courting. And it was a month after this interview took place where they were first at their official dating began. They appeared at an event together, an official event, a month after this was aired. So it was all around the corner. I'm sure she was playing nice until the deal was sealed. And it's so interesting to note how Prince Harry's story or narrative has altered so very dramatically from this period, because this isn't way back in his traumatised teenage years we're talking about. This is just 8 years ago when he was a fully fledged adult, about to go into the nuptial era, and old enough to know better. So this was the campaign to end stigma around mental health, if you remember, because the Waleses were all over this and the subject of mental health before anybody else, of course, before it became the vogue that went on to be.
That actually it's okay to have that conversation, even if it is uncomfortable or awkward, but it's just starting it.
Harry says that he and William had both mooted the fact that neither of them had dwelt on their mother's death. So this had been brought up for discussion between the two of them. They both said, we haven't discussed it enough, we should talk about it. Hadn't spent time discussing the matter or their feelings with each other.
Both of us have always been open to each other, saying, we've never really talked about it. We've never really talked about losing a mum at such a young age.
And he says that both of them acknowledged this. So it's not as if William is ostriching with his head in the sand about the whole thing and being cruel and cold. And Catherine goes on to say that especially while she's been working on her early childhood project in those early days, that she had found herself having to consider how William and Harry had been able to cope.
Considering everything that you boys obviously sadly went through and the trauma that you experienced, I do think it's incredible how strong and how you've been able to cope, really.
And she says that she puts that down to their early years and their childhood experiences.
And I put that down to your really early years, childhood experience.
Well, I'm not sure that Harry would agree with that. And I'm not actually, I will confess, sure that William would agree with that either, in all honesty. But she also puts success in dealing with their trauma down to their relationship and says that they are amazingly close.
But also the relationship that you've got, you're amazingly close.
Yeah.
And yes, you know...
Most of the
time.
That is how she sees them. No doubt that's how William saw them. And we were always led to believe that Harry felt the same way about his amazing sister-in-law. They were a wonderful sort of team. Of course, William does interject and sort of jokes as well most of the time, like any other sibling would do. You know, it's not always hunky-dory with siblings 100% of the time, but, you know, just a normal sibling relationship. But William does say that the death of Diana brought them together, that they were uniquely bonded because of that traumatic experience they shared.
But we have been brought closer because of the circumstances as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, you are, you know, uniquely bonded because of what we've been through.
Yeah.
And he agrees that they had not spoken about Diana enough.
But, you know, even Harry and I, over the years, have not talked enough about, you know, our mother. You know,
Never enough.
And I've got to tell you, he seems very thoughtful, very considered, and, you know, you can see when he looks at his brother that it is with concern and with affection.
No, but it's you know, and some families sadly aren't as lucky as you guys have been, and being able to share things.
Catherine says, do you think that this campaign has made both of you more aware of that and all of this? And it is Harry that says that he had refused to bring up the past.
I always thought to myself, you know, what's the point in bringing up the past? What's the point in bringing up something that's only going to make you sad? It ain't going to change it. It ain't going to bring her back.
He was reluctant to dwell on it. So this is what I wanted to see Miranda. What was her name? I'm thinking of Miranda from Sex and the City. Miranda Kildare. Dr. Kildare. Can I call you Randy? I used to live with a girl called Miranda. I called her Randy. I digress. Yeah. Do you understand this? Harry says in the interview that it was him that had refused to deal with all of this, not William. No, not William. In fairness, Harry admits all of this, by the way, in Spare. Well, he admits that he was deeply repressed throughout his teen years and that there were very damaging consequences. And, you know, he went on to form addictions all over the place, which is understandable due to all the trauma he'd been through. But all of this flies in the face of his recent suggestions and what he wrote about in Spare. You know, that William was never really a close brother to him. They weren't really that close. William kind of ignored him to some extent, used to brush him off, not really a brotherly figure. You know, he finds his brotherhood in his polo charms and the nachos vulgarises and this, that and the fourth. But here he says it was William who tried to sit him down and have a discussion.
And when you start thinking like that, it can be really damaging. And you always said to me, you said, you know, you've got to sit down and think about those memories. But for me, it was like, don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
It's there, captured on film. Was Harry lying at this point? Oh, I was lying to myself. William didn't really care about me. You can just see the reimagining of it, can't you?
You know, I thought I was quite, you know, fairly sort of straight down the line, but I'm actually quite, you know, I feel quite a lot more than I used to.
Can you see how difficult and slippery it is to deal with this character? Slippery. Recollections vary constantly with him and the wife. It was Harry that didn't want to think about it. So, Harry, was William actually ignoring you, or was he merely giving you the wide berth that you were insisting upon? Do you understand? Was he not just respecting your boundaries? You kept telling him you weren't ready. You didn't want to deal with it. You didn't want to dwell on it. What point would it do? What good would it be? So what was William supposed to do? Keep badgering on at you? No, let's talk. Bang our heads together now, Udo. You wouldn't have liked that very much, would you? It's William that says it's easy to run away and avoid mental struggles, but that must be a focus.
But it's, I think, what must happen with us and must happen with others as well is that you have to prioritise your mental health. Yeah. You have to say to yourself at some point, because it's very easy to run away from it, you know, to walk away from it and avoid it the whole time. You know, someone has to take the lead and has to be brave enough to force that conversation.
Now, we're going to return to Harry a little bit later, but let's have a little bit of sunshine for a moment, because it's the last golden week of autumn for Princess Anne, who's going to be turning 75 next week-ish, or is it this week? The 15th of August she turns 75, so she is going to be progressing from autumn to the early sparkly days of the winter season. Isn't that gorgeous? Very excited for her. The sparkling hoarfrost of winter is about to be rhymed upon Princess Anne. Gorgeous. And Buckingham Palace released a new photograph of the Princess Royal and Sir Tim to mark her 75th. And this was captured at the recent state banquet. It looks absolutely delicious. And it said that she turned down proposals for parties. Everybody wanted her to celebrate, but she was just staunchly Anne. And No fuss, no snot and tarana. I understand, no, didn't want any of that. And they wanted her to do a milestone interview as well, but she didn't want the attention. You know, she's not like the Sussexes. She just wants to get on, do the work. She invited her charity patronages to the palace for official engagements. But no fuss, no fuss. She's just simply going to be following in her royal summer tradition of sailing with the hubby off the west coast of Scotland this year. I wanted to share with you something that goes on behind the scenes here for those of you who might find it interesting. If you haven't got a YouTube channel with a comment section, you won't see how it's presented to us from our side of the lens. And behind the scenes, AI have begun throwing up suggested responses to your comments and questions that are designed to save us the time of typing out answers for ourselves. And the AI harvests our own vernacular, our terms of expression, our way of talking, as if I could be emulated, my dear. It's not possible, but they do. They give it their best shot. And it's so creepy, I've got to tell you. It sprang up, was it yesterday or the day before? These suggestions just sprang up, and it freaks me out. It really does. Some examples were, afternoon, my dear, they're all ending my dear, and they spring up with pair emojis, using my sort of vernacular. Isn't it ghastly? Isn't it ghastly and creepy? Oh, technology comes with so many benefits for us all. I'm not denying that. See how wonderfully connected we are, all over the globe. It certainly has its benefits, but all of them come with such a price, don't they? We pay the price for them. It's a tension that we all just have to live with. You can't put it back in the box, can you, this kind of technology? But I don't like it. I really don't like all this AI business. No, I don't. I do like Princess Beatrice. I know some of you don't. Some of you don't care for the Yorkie girls, mainly and largely because you've been grossly misinformed, I'm afraid to tell you, because anybody in the know, anyone who's brushed shoulders with them, in the tiniest way throughout their entire lives, has only good things to say about these gals. They are good and decent gals, and I bring Beatrice up because she turned 37 this week. It's been her birthday. I wish her all the very best with many happy returns to you, my darling. I think they're lovely gals. Now, one could say that they, especially Beatrice at times, are gullible in some ways, and I understand it, but I also feel that it is a misrepresentation of the fact that they actually, out of everyone in the royal family, they take the most after the late Queen, their late granny, who only looked for the good in people. And she could be accused of ostriching as well, if you want to put it that way, putting her head in the sand about certain issues. I certainly would accuse the late Queen of that in some ways, and perhaps you could say that about Beatrice and Eugenie. They might say they are simply modelling Christian values, sterling values of looking for the good in people, which can come across as naive to others, but make sense to the likes of them, because they have good characters and they expect it of other people. Do you understand? So it can look as if it's to their detriment, when actually it's down to their good qualities. Now, I'm singing Beatrice's praise today because I felt so very bad for the girl. Obviously, it's been a rough week with her parents taking a great big beating in the press in response to the Andrew Lowney book, which may or may not be deserved, but there were rather harsh words from the likes of Jan Muir. I think this was actually on Princess Beatrice's birthday. Scathing she was about Andrew and Fergie, referring to them as Yorkies, I noticed, which is the word that I use for them. But I thought that gunning for the Yorkie girls the way she did was entirely unnecessary, and it was a low blow in my estimation. It really was. She said that they have been raised on a buffering cushion of shady money and dodgy diamonds and remain a pair of toothy poshos who have achieved absolutely nothing in life. That's the bit that I didn't like. Achieved absolutely nothing in life except an ability to keep out of trouble, a trait their parents must now envy. Well, firstly, my dear, this ability you speak of, their ability to keep out of the trouble, should not be so casually disregarded as if that's nothing. Because how many other members of any other royal family go through life without causing any sort of trouble and not a whisper or a whisker of scandal? It is a genuine tribute to their characters that despite the unrelenting gaze of hacks like you and the public like me, and under the auspices of parents with rather, shall we say, messy reputations and dubious connections, allegedly, they are both exemplary and immaculate royals, and they've turned out very well in that regard. They don't cause a headache for anybody at all, unless you want to put Prince Andrew into the mix, because I think it was Beatrice that encouraged him to do the interview with Mateless, wasn't it, possibly? They are a credit to Her late Majesty, who adored both of them, and they are a credit to the reigning king. And secondly, regarding your assertion that they have achieved absolutely nothing in their rotten, pathetic lives, well, for one, both of them have achieved very loving families, dignified families, I should say, of their own, and neither of them had stellar templates for a family coming through, did they? They have both acquired doting, adoring husbands who are both good and decent men from all accounts, and they take their parenting seriously. They have blended families, Beatrice in particular. They take that seriously, and they are not the thickos that some quarters or the press make out. They're intelligent young ladies, and if you've heard them speak at length, which is available on platforms like YouTube for their various passion projects, you will know that they are not thickos, and they do what they can with limited royal responsibilities. For example, Usually's anti-slavery collective, which was going for years before it became the vogue to bang on about slavery and this sort of thing. Beatrice is very involved with her passion projects, such as advocating for dyslexia, of which she has her own lived experience. And they both inherited the late Queen's way of only looking for the good in people. And while many would say, as I mentioned, that it could be seen as ostriching, putting your head in the sand about certain things, others might say it's Christian. So I wish Beatrice a very happy birthday and many happy returns, and send lots of love. Now, this is interesting because with the loss of Sentebale from Prince Harry's portfolio, which comes with its sadnesses, whether or not Harry is or isn't to blame for the current predicament, his involvement did raise a lot of money and a lot of awareness for those in need. So it's a bitter pill for him to swallow. But regardless, comparisons are being drawn, as I've drawn myself, with Prince William's great successes with his charitable endeavours. I'm afraid this comparison has to be made because he disparages his brother so. Well, the latest financial report from the Royal Foundation of the Prince and Princess of Wales has been published by the Charity Commission this week, and it's quite astonishing. They've managed to raise an income of over £12 million last year, 12.2 million, which is an increase of over £4 million compared to the previous year, and it's been deemed a stunning result in a very challenging financial environment. Do you see William's expertise here? They raised £7 million in donations and legacies, with £2.5 million from the American friends of the royal family, which is an extra $1 million than they managed from those quarters on the previous year, and on top of that, Earthshot is performing fabulously. The income in 2024 was of £23.5 million, which is a 68% increase in donations. That's 12.8 million to 21.4 million in a year. Such is the draw of Big Willie and Little Kitty. Do you understand? You know, this is real royalty. This is real dignity. That's £35 million in total for those two organisations alone in 1 year, which is fabulous. Their reputation, unlike the Harkles, goes from strength to strength. And Sentebale have been clapping back online and making their position very clear in response to the Charity Commission, saying that it provides Sentebale with some degree of reassurance that the Charity Commission has not identified widespread bullying within the charity, but the Commission has acknowledged the strong perception of ill treatment felt by a number of parties to the dispute and the impact this may have had on them personally. The Charity Commission is explicitly clear, including in its public guidance, that it is not the Commission's responsibility to adjudicate or mediate internal disputes. This would include individual allegations of bullying, harassment, misogyny, misogynoir, etc. As a result, the Commission has not investigated any individual allegations and therefore has not made any findings in relation to individuals, including Prince Harry. Hoo-hoo. The issues not investigated by the Commission can and may be dealt with through avenues more appropriate than the Commission. Be afraid, Harry. Be very afraid. She's coming for you. Well, it was a tonic to see our Catherine pop up. It would be nice to see her popping up even more here and there, because we miss her when she's away, don't we? But it was still very nice to see her in this Veronica Beard, a dicky blazer in forest green with a silken ivory tank by Joseph, with Cartier Trinity jewels to the earlobe. She was there promoting several short animated films that have been released by her Royal Foundation for Early Childhood, and each one explains the importance of nurturing interactions in infancy. Catherine was involved in the development of the films behind the scenes, and these images of her attending a creative briefing were captured in June. And at RAF Lossiemout in Scotland, the King attended the stand-up parade for No. 42 Torpedo Bomber Squadron. Lossiemout is one of 2 quick reaction alert stations which protect the UK airspace, and at the base, His Majesty represented a squadron standard and thanked servicemen and women for their sacrifices, as well as the families that support them. And he looked very kingly, I thought, didn't he? He was smartly turned out, with all generations thrilled to be in the royal presence. And His Majesty watched a fly-past of Typhoon bombers and a Poseidon. And during these last few days of Princess Anne's autumn season, she attended the official opening day of the 150th Dublin Horse Show at the Royal Dublin Society. The Dublin Horse Show brings together some of the best horses from Ireland and the world through competitions. Princess Anne toured a special exhibition on the history of the horse show, and she met representatives from a charity that offers equine-assisted learning and therapy services. She met with members of Riding for the Disabled, and she was nearly a member of that club herself, wasn't she, after she suffered her own injuries at the hoofs of her own horse. Thankfully, she is now recovered, but that was a great mystery. She had been welcomed in her elegant pale green ensemble by Michael D. Higgins, who's the President of Ireland, and I've got to say he looks precisely how one would want the President of Ireland to look, doesn't he? I don't think I've seen him before, and he's so cute. I don't know anything about his politics, by the way, so don't come for me. I don't know anything about the boy. What I will tell you is that he looks so cute, so fabulously Irish. He puts me in mind of a family from my childhood that I knew very well. The McCormicks who hailed from Clonmel in County Tipperary, and there are many McCormicks, by the way, in that area, but yeah, it brings back memories. I can see in the face the resemblance from that area of Ireland. How are things in Glockamore? Thank you very much for joining me and for your company. I look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast, my darlings. Take care and toodle pip.